But on the heels of the brand new advisory, let's bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross. Bryan, good to see you. So we now know Humberto gone, Imelda in.
That's right.
Yes, Humberto is merging with this upper-level jet stream in the front and so forth. And there was we had a whole big discussion yesterday about whether they would interact with in some really weird way, and that put all this uncertainty on what was going to happen around Bermuda. But that uncertainty is gone today. Humberto is just being absorbed to the north, and Imelda is acting like a hurricane in the North Atlantic, and so it is going to interact with the jet stream, but not with Humberto. All right, more on that in just a moment. Here it is, and there's the size of the tropical storm force winds in the yellow there, and here's Bermuda here. So obviously approaching. There's what's left of Humberto up there. It's a bigger storm, but far enough away and being swept away in the jet stream, and all the energy with it is kind of stretching out, so not a factor for interaction. There are the hurricane force gusts, so you can see much bigger than the cone. So we're not looking at the cone here. We're looking at something much bigger than the cone. So there's really no way that Bermuda is going to miss an impact. Exactly how much impact, that's another question. These two things about 500 miles apart now because Humberto is being stretched away. They were down to less than 400 miles earlier on. All right, so here are the two cones, and I was making note of what they were going to be when they were the closest together. You see that this was actually Imelda here up to 105 as Humberto is speeding away. All right, so here's this dip in the jet stream that now has grabbed Humberto, and there you can see it right there getting kind of merged into that northern stream. And what's going on here as we look at Imelda right there heading toward Bermuda, the jet stream dip is going to actually aid Imelda's intensity. It's not so much to grab it and stretch it out, but it's enough to pull air out of the top of it, and that makes more air go into the bottom of it, and that allows it to intensify. So that's why the Hurricane Center has that intensity peaking up a little bit. So here we see it as it's just after midnight or so, right in the vicinity here of Bermuda. And notice the jet stream dip is just getting down, just picking it up. And so that same transition of merging with this kind of North Atlantic system that is going on with Humberto and has caused it to kind of dissipate or merge, that is going to be happening just about the time that the system is over Bermuda. So that's what you're seeing in the model here with that dip in the jet stream right there. And then moves forward, and it does indeed get absorbed by later tomorrow and then on to the weekend. And there you see this huge dip in the jet stream. There's where the model has what's left of Imelda. There's where the Hurricane Center has it right there. So it's always complicated stuff when they're in the North Atlantic. Here's the 11 a.m. advisory, 100-mile-an-hour winds, 966 pressure. You were talking about this earlier. Wow, super low pressure for a storm that's only got 100-mile-an-hour winds, but that is because remember that the winds are related to the pressure and the surrounding pressure. Surrounding pressure is just low because we had another hurricane in the area, east-northeast at 20 miles an hour. So moving right along in the direction of Bermuda. There you see right in the middle of the cone, 105 mile an hour hurricane expected there late tonight, midnight to maybe 2 a.m. Eastern time. Remember, they're an hour later. They're on Atlantic Standard Time there, and then on out to sea and weakening and transitioning into that non-tropical storm. Here are what the models say, and they're all right in the cone. There you see, and there's the consensus a little to the bottom of the cone. Now, you would normally say, well, that would be good if it passed south of Bermuda, but in this case, no. Remember, the jet stream is just to the north, making more energy on the left side of the storm. So while normally the right side is where most of the energy is because of the forward motion, in this case, the left side is going to get energized by the Gulf Stream, or the jet stream. So unfortunately, I don't think that's necessarily good news for Bermuda. There's the Google AI models right down the cone there. And when we look at the real Google forecast, that's the consensus of those, is just north of the island. So it's a really close call exactly which side. But boy, they're going to get a version of it tonight. We'll just have to see exactly what is going on. There you see Humberto up to the north. There, the Google model dies it out as well, and it's going to stay well to the north. Here's the radar out of Bermuda right now, and you can see the outer bands of Imelda and kind of what's left of Humberto just offshore. So no problem right now, although the wind is still 28 miles an hour, kind of feeding into Humberto, I think, more than Imelda at this point. 84 degrees and not bad. So all this begins later on this afternoon as these bands that are moving this way around Imelda approach. All right, so here's this final advisory on Humberto, 70-mile-an-hour winds, so it's really not a hurricane anymore, and moving away. There is the last cone on Humberto. We still have all this going on in the Atlantic, this incredible amount of energy coming out of these two storms, pushing back toward the entire East Coast. Stephen and Britta were talking about what's happened there in Cape Hatteras. That's a combination of high tides, but it's the relentless push of the water. It's not so much any one level of the water, but just because it keeps coming, and it's going to do that the rest of the week. So we're going to have an erosion issue and a danger issue in the water on the entire East Coast of the U.S. here for this entire week. Guys, back to you.
See, and I don't know, Brian, do we speculate? We've got about 6 hours here. For them to forecast explicitly a little bit more strengthening before it reaches Bermuda, I mean, could this make a run at a major hurricane? Hurricane Hunter is going to be investigating this thing, I guess, up until it makes its possible landfall or comes close.
Yeah, I mean, it could. The exact amount that when we get jet stream interaction with a tropical system and it's in some kind of transition, exact amount of benefit versus detriment. So you talk about the good trough, bad trough. The trough is the dip in the jet stream. So it can get just close enough that it enhances the storm and it gets more inflow and that's more wind coming in, or it can get just too far and it starts weakening it because it starts stretching it out and pushing dry air into the system. So both of those things, it's just a fine line, and forecasting that is very, very difficult. And also, if it pushes dry air into the system, then we can get what's called a sting jet, which is this other blast of air that enhances the gusts in the hurricane. And so all those things are very, very fine lines, and you almost can't tell what's happening until after the fact.
Yeah, no doubt. And as Matthew had just mentioned, with a system getting stretched out, look no further than Humberto. We see what a trough will do to a storm like Humberto, now no longer a hurricane. All right, well, we will wait and see with that newest advisory out from the Hurricane Center. Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Bryan Norcross. Appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.